Yo, what's good, guys? Inswain with Inswain Audio. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe and stick around because I drop videos just like this every single day. You're not going to want to miss out. Today, I'm going to be giving you a review / overview of the Waves Silk Vocal plugin. This one right here is a workhorse. It does a lot of different things in one. It can look kind of intimidating, but it's actually really simple to use once I break it down for you. So let's get into that. All right, I got a little project pulled up here. So we'll pull up an instance of Waves Silk Vocal here. You can see what we're looking at. It looks nice and pretty, blue. I like it. One thing to note before we get into it, right down here, if you click this, there is an expand mode with extra options. So I feel like a lot of people might not know that, but yeah, you can expand it. I'm going to do that just for now so we can see it expanded, so we can cover everything. Like I said, it's a little intimidating, but it's super simple once I break it down. But first, let's bypass it and just listen to what we have, and so you can hear that.
Living in the city, we're just living in the city. Oh, we're living in the city. Yeah, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard.
So what this plugin is it's kind of like a dynamics resonance suppressor, but it also has a built-in compressor and a gate. It's basically meant to be like an all-in-one, like vocal cleanup, like get started type of plugin, and that's exactly what it's good for. This main panel over here, this section right here, this is the main processing, and that's where we're gonna start. And it's broken the frequency spectrum down into lows, right here, lows with this corresponding area, mids with this corresponding area, and the highs with this corresponding area. The lows go from 20 hertz to 300 hertz, the mids go from 300 hertz to 4K, and the highs go from 4K up to 20K. And how this works is if you grab the knob and you increase it, what it's doing is, it kind of seems counterintuitive, but as you add more, it's reducing frequencies. So the more you add, the less frequencies you will have. It's basically adding more frequency reduction. That's how you can think of it. And what it does is it finds the resonances and suppresses them dynamically. So it's intended to find the problem frequencies and remove them dynamically, meaning moving, so that they're only taking them out as they become overbearing. That's the intended purpose of this plugin. And what I'll do is I'll just start messing with this, and you'll see as I increase more, you'll see how it's dipping out frequencies in blue, and being able to visualize it might help you understand it. So I'll do that.
Living in the city, we're just living in the city. Oh, we're living in the city. Yeah, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city, we're just living in the city. Oh, we're living in the city. Yeah, it's hard.
So now that you're able to see it and visualize it, it makes it a little bit easier to understand. But anyways, this controls the low frequencies, the mid frequencies, and the high frequencies. And what's nice about the mids is we can pinpoint it and fine tune it even more. So we can, instead of going from 300 to 4K, we can move the lower bound and the upper bound and make it a more tighter area.
Living in the city, we're just living.
And you're going to see it's focusing more on there. It goes a little bit above and below because of the slope of the filter, but that's just to keep it sounding natural. But that's a nice little feature we have for the mids. We don't have that for the lows and the highs. Now, we also have this headphone here. What this does is it solos out the band so you can listen to it. So I'm going to solo the vocal.
Living in the city.
And if I click the headband, we'll hear just the low frequencies of the vocal.
Living in the city.
Same for the mids
Living in the city.
and the highs. And you can also see this blue knob here next to them. You can disable a frequency range. So you can use just the highs if you want. You can use this just as a de-esser, or you could do just the mids and the lows. However you want to do it, you have that ability to bypass the processing of individual frequency bands. Now we also have over here, we have two options, male and female. It doesn't specify what these do, but what I'm guessing is they're altering what frequencies these hone in on more based on if it's a female or a male vocal. But it doesn't really specify. It just says that it's not able to be automated. Set this, you can always change it, but set it first. So just set it accordingly to who your singer is, and that will better help the plugin do its processing. Now we also have this button here. This is a delta button or a difference button. What this is going to do is it's going to allow you to hear just the difference of the before and after the plugin. So you're only hearing the processing. So right now we're not doing any processing. So if I turn this on, we should hear nothing. Perfect. Now, what if we introduce a little bit of processing and turn it on? Now we're going to hear just the processing. We're going to hear just what frequencies are being removed from the mids.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city.
And then as I increase the processing in the highs, you could hear when she said city, that sibilance, you could really hear it because we're listening to what's being removed. So all that we're hearing is what's removed. So this can be a nice way to hear if you're over processing or under processing. It's a nice way to check things, but you probably don't want to leave it on for your mix. It's just a check. Now over here in the highs, we have a little bit of a way to fine tune it. We can leave it how it is naturally, like the other bands, where it is, just reducing a certain area, like a bell cut or a notch frequency. This acts as a de-esser, or you can turn it into a low pass filter or a high shelf. Is how you want to think of it. And what this does is it makes it remove frequencies above 4K.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city.
You can see it can get really dark really fast. So most of the time you're probably going to be using it in this one, but you never know.
Living in the city.
What this does is it finds the frequencies where the S's are and reduces them. This one focuses on 4K and above, the whole frequency range. So we're going to leave it on this one for now. Okay, so that covers everything in this area over here, the main area. We got the big and scary part out of the way. Now let's kind of dial in some settings.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Yeah, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Yeah, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city. We're just living in the city.
Sounds pretty good. You can tell the before and the after, it goes like dark and dull and it adds some clarity. So I'll show you that with the vocal soloed so you can hear it, starting with it off.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard.
So when it's off, it's very dark and the plugin is honestly doing its job. So that's the main section and the main function of this plugin. Now let's move over here to the dynamics, this area over here. This is a compressor. Super simple. It's a one knob compressor. You don't control anything else. You drag this down to get more compression, or you leave it here for less compression. You can disable it and enable it. So let's listen to that.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard.
Cool, get a lot of compression, but if you notice, it's getting louder. So it can be hard to tell, is this sounding better? Is it sounding worse? Or is it the same, just more compressed? We don't know because it's louder, it's tricking us. Well, that's what the output gain is for. So you can, turn it down or up after the processing like this.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's
Cool, but what if we wanted to automate that process? Let me option click these to reset them. If you click and drag right here, you can adjust the compression, but look at the output gain down here is also moving. So what this does is it increases the compression and decreases the output gain, or inversely. So it's gonna move them together so that it always stays at the same level regardless of how much compression you have. It automatically level matches them. I'll show you that.
living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city.
So you can see there, no matter how much compression we were getting, it wasn't getting louder or quieter. It was staying right at the same level, and that is by clicking and dragging there. So it automatically moves them inversely together. That is a great feature. I love when compressors have that. Awesome. Okay, let's move down here to the expanded region. Remember to click this to expand it for some fine tuning. This right here is a high pass filter at 60 hertz, meaning it's going to remove most of the frequencies below 60 hertz. It's a 72 decibels per octave slope. If you're wondering, which if you want to visualize that, I'll pull up another EQ. We'll do a low cut filter, high pass, sorry, 72 decibels per octave. at 60 hertz. So this is what the shape of the filtering looks like. It's removing the frequencies below 60 and not affecting above. So when you engage this and it's blue, that's what it's doing. When it's off, it's not processing at all. So you can turn that on. This is a common thing to do in vocals, is to cut out those super low frequencies. So that's why it's on by default. Speed, this adjusts the speed of the attack and the release of the processing. This is not the speed of the dynamics compressor. It is the speed of the resonance suppression up here, this first area that we talked about. So we move it to the right, we have slower attack and slower release. Move it to the left, we have faster attack and faster release. Precision, what this does is it once again affects this module, the resonance suppression. It adjusts basically the Q factor, or the width of the processing. So if you want sharp, they're going to be more sharp, finer lines. Smooth is going to be wider, more broad things. I'll let you see that so you can see what it looks like. I'll set it to default and then watch the shape of what it's reducing.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. When it's hard, it's hard, it's hard.
You can see when it's smooth, it's a lot smoother, more broad strokes, whereas sharp, it's a lot of sharp, jagged, like teeth looking.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city.
And you can see here it says sharper means more notches may cause artifacts. So if it's too sharp, it may sound unnatural. So make sure you use your ears for that. Makeup, this is makeup gain. This is similar to this function for the compressor, how it matches it. What this is going to do is, because we're reducing frequencies only, we're not adding, the signal's getting quieter. So by makeup gain being on, which it is by default, it's going to compensate for that and turn the overall signal up so that it's never getting quieter. It's always staying at the same level no matter how many frequencies you are reducing. You can turn that off, but once again, it's on by default because most of the time your vocal is where you want it and you want to leave it there. You don't want to take out frequencies and have it getting quieter, especially while you're working and processing, because then it's, getting quieter and farther back and it's harder to hear, meaning it's harder to process. So I recommend leaving that on, but if for some reason you want to gain stage it yourself, you can turn that off, no problem. Here we also have a noise gate. It is off by default. If you move it to the right, that's getting more and more gain reduction. That's getting increasingly more drastic of an effect for the gate. The noise gate is going to remove unwanted noise in between the vocal passages, like it says right there. This can be nice to clean up messiness in between takes, bleed from other instruments, etc. You can also leave it off and use your own noise gate, but it's a nice little built-in feature. And then of course over here we have a mix knob. By default it's going to be at 100%, but if you want to blend in the original before processing, you can do that, or you can just leave it on full processing. At 0, it's going to bypass all the processing of the plugin. But keep in mind that the high pass filter is not affected by the mix knob. So whether it's at 0 or 100, the high pass filter is going to function how it's functioning, either on or off. You cannot use that on the mix knob, but everything else should work with the mix knob. So now that we've covered everything, let's reset it to all to 0 and try to dial in some resonance suppression, some dynamics processing, and maybe even some gate. We'll see. Let's do it.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. When it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. When it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. When it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. When it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. When it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. In living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard. Living in the city. We're just living in the
right, that sounds pretty good. Let's check it out before and after in context of the mix, starting with it off.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard.
So it definitely gets a lot less dull, a lot brighter, not as muffled. It definitely adds some clarity, puts the vocal a little bit more up front in the mix. Now I'll do a before and after with the vocal soloed, starting with the before, starting with it off.
Living in the city. We're just living in the city. Oh, living in the city. Well, it's hard, it's hard, it's hard.
You can hear as soon as I turn it back off, it's super muffled. Sounds like she's singing like this. So it definitely adds a lot of clarity. It's not a final mix, but that's not what it's intending to do. This is a great starting place. Sounds really good, cleans the vocal up, and I could definitely see how this would have some uses with some beginner mixers, or if you're mixing on the fly and you want to get something quick in like a studio session, this can be great for that, or it can be good to fix up a problem vocal. I can definitely see how it would have some use for that. But anyways, guys, there is a full breakdown, overview, ins and outs of everything to do with this plugin. I read the manual, I studied it. I'm here to relay it to you in a way you can understand. Review of it, I think it's good for what it's good for. Definitely, it's not, going to be use this for a final mix, a one-stop shop, but that's not what it's intending to do. So I think it's great for what it's intending to do. Just make sure you understand what purpose it's serving, and I think you'll enjoy it a lot if you need it for that. Anyways, guys, my name is Inswain with Inswain Audio. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Anyways, guys, I will see y'all tomorrow, man. Peace.